bound by his decision, more so where the employer has accepted resignation. In addition, that the employee can only be accepted back in employment if his employer consents to the employee's decision to withdraw resignation. Clear and unequivocal resignation which has been accepted by the employer deprives the employee of locus pugnate right to withdraw an offer of resignation after it has been accepted. In the case of Steve Mutua Munga and Homegrown Kenya Limited and two others, Mr. Speaker, the court adopted the definition of the term coercion to give in Black's Law Dictionary 8th edition to comprise the compulsion by physical force or threat of physical force. Further, it is stated that elements of coercion also include where a person acts out of fear or actual or threat confinement. Case laws from different companies' jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, however, in that an employee may withdraw a notice of resignation where special circumstances exist relating to context in which the resignation occurs. The Irish Employment Tribunal in UD 946 of 2007, Mr. Speaker, versus Mark Manas versus Brian McCarthy, contractors, Mr. Speaker, accepted that the letter withdrawing a notice of resignation made by the employee was binding on the employer, having taken stock of the context in which the resignation was offered. In UK case, Mr. Speaker, QuickFit GB Limited versus Line Home of 1992, IRLR 156, it was held that if an employee resigns on the heat of the moment and special circumstances exist, the employer should investigate the matter and ascertain the employee's true intentions. Special circumstances, it was held, may include pressure on the employee or the employee's personality. In this case, the employee resigned on the heat of the moment after considerable humiliation by his manager. The question now is, Mr. Speaker, did Dr. Wesley Bor voluntarily or was coerced to resign and can be rescinded and he can rescind his resignation before the lapse of the notice is served? The disputes on the resignation are highly fact-driven, and the best approach in resolving such disputes is to examine each case on its own facts. The test is whether a reasonable person would understand the employee's statements and action surrounding resignation to show the employee to have made a decision to clearly and unequivocally end the employment relationship. The best practice from succession Commonwealth judicial pronouncement is that the employer should allow a cooling off period to ascertain the circumstances of resignation. The best practices from succession Commonwealth judicial pronouncement is that the employer should allow a cooling off period to ascertain the circumstance of resignation. In conclusion, therefore, the fate of rescinding the notice of resignation by Dr. Wesley Bor cannot be ascertained in regard to the fact of his resignation. Although the period of notice has not expired for him to do so, this therefore means that Dr. Wesley Bor can still rescind his notice of resignation any day before the lapse of the period of the notice of resignation. Mr. Speaker, in the case of Mtati versus KPMG Limited, Mr. Speaker, of 2017, BLL 315 LC, the court distinguished the consequences of immediate resignation and the resignation by notice on bending disciplinary process. It is stated that where the employee has given notice and is serving notice period, it was held that the employer retains jurisdiction to discipline the employee until notice takes effect. The court held in Ronier Peter Loitering versus Stellenbosch Municipality, C-159 of 2010, that if notice is given and not waived, the contract terminates on the expiry of the notice. If the employer waives any part of the notice, the contract terminates when the employee leaves work at the commencement of the waived period. Also in the case of Honono versus Willowville Bantu School Board, and another of 1961-4 SA 408A at 414H to 415A, the court held that the contract terminates when the full period of notice expires. In other words, if a month's notice is required on or before the first day of the month, notice given on the second day of the month will mean that the contract ends at the end of the next month. In the case of SALS staff, OBO, Budesden, Hout, and Metro Rail of 201-9 BL of 926, AMSA at para 6, the court opined that subject to the waiver of the notice period and the possible summary termination of contract by the employer during the period of the notice, the contract does not terminate on the date the notice is given, but when the notice period expires. As highlighted in the above case laws, the select committee is therefore properly placed to proceed and conclude its investigation and report to the House within the stipulated timeline as captured in Section 43 B of the County Government Act. Mr. Speaker, the select committee observation, the committee made the following observation: that violation of the Constitution and other laws, that through scrutiny of affidavits of Rosemary Rob, Alphonse Rotich, Judy Chepkorir, Edna Tanoi, and Daniel Rob, the County Secretary indeed falsified and fabricated of minutes dated 18th and 20th of July 2023. That Janso Victor and the company advocates through their letter to the clerk dated 12th of July 2024 confirmed that EACC, DCI, and ODPP are actively investigating whether the County Secretary falsely swore contrary to Section 1.4 as read together with Section 36 of the Penal Code, fabricated evidence contrary to Section 113 A, B, and Section 36 as read together with Section 349 of the Penal Code, and gave false information to the members of the public and public officers contrary to Section 19 as read together with Section 10 of Public Officers Ethics Act. On the abuse of office, Mr. Speaker, the committee made the following observation: that the County Secretary indeed acted ultra vires and usurped himself powers by transferring staff within the department, mostly Department of Health Services, without any justifiable reasons, thereby causing frustrations and demoralized the competent staffs of the County Government of Kericho. Mr. Speaker, some of the transfers, according to the witnesses' testimonies, were as a result of them not agreeing to demands by the County Secretary. Mr. Speaker, that during his tenure as the County Secretary, most of the county staff was frustrated and demoralized by his commission or omissions. That the County Secretary influenced dismissal of some staffs of the county despite not being his supervision, causing agony on a section of the county government officers. Mr. Speaker, on the count on the incompetence, Mr. Speaker, the committee made that all the transfers effected by the County Secretary was not sanctioned by CHRMAC and the County Public Service resolutions. Mr. Speaker, that the County Secretary did not demonstrate management and leadership skills, and that a scrutiny of his personal file revealed that SMC senior management course and the senior leadership development program certificates are not attached, putting to question his management and leadership capabilities. On the other observations, Mr. Speaker, the select committee found that the County Secretary has tendered a notice of resignation, thereby making his intention known to the appointing authority and not a resignation letter. The notice was accepted by His Excellency the Governor. The notice of resignation was copied to the clerk of the assembly, yet the said notice ought to have been addressed only by the appointing authority. That the appointing authority's acceptance of his intention to resign is inconsequential and is not binding until the 7th of August of 2024, the expiry of the notice period. That the action of the county secretary were not checked by the appointing authority, thus emboldened him to act further. That the evidence from some witnesses who appeared before the committee could not be substantiated, whereas others were substantiated. 8.0. The recommendations from the select committee, Mr. Speaker, were that the county secretary violated the constitution and other laws. Therefore, he should face full force of law. 2, Mr. Speaker, that county government employees who were frustrated by the county secretary be taken through psychological examination, counseling session to recover from the injustices and trauma meted upon them. Mr. Speaker, that the affected employees be served justice through the examination by CHRMAC and County Public Service Board in consultation with respective chief officers within a period of 30 days, and a training be conducted for effective service delivery. That effective holders must at all times follow the law in discharge of their mandate and adhere to the rules and regulations of the public service. That the County Public Service, CHRMAC, and Human Resource Office ensures that all the academic and professional certificates are verified before engaging and promoting county employees. That all the public officers, state officers, including the appointing authority, take personal political responsibility of their acts. That all the public officers at all times adhere to the provisions of Article 10 and Article 235 of the Constitution. That the committee finds the allegation as highlighted in the motion passed by the County Assembly on the 9th July 2024 regarding the removal of office of Dr. Wesley K. Bor as Kericho County Secretary are substantiated. Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge, the committee acknowledges the office of the Speaker and that of the clerk of the County Assembly for the support extended to it during the entire period of the investigation, cross-examination of the witnesses, and development of the Select Committee report. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the members of the Secretariat of the Select Committee for their commitment and tireless effort in ensuring that the committee effectively discharged its mandate. Mr. Speaker, the Select Committee acknowledges the contribution and statements made by various witnesses, more so from the medical officers, senior officers of the Department of Health, and other departments of the County Executive, and the members of the County Assembly from Kapsaos Ward. The committee sincerely expresses gratitude to the House for having entrusted us with the important mandate of coming up with a report upon the investigation of the motion of removal from office of Dr. Wesley Bor, the County Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I wish to confirm that the recommendation of this committee in this report are carefully considered. It is my honor and pleasure to present this House on behalf of the Select Committee the report of the investigation of removal from office of Dr. Wesley Bor, County Secretary, as stated by the mover of the motion, which was approved on 9 July by this House. Mr. Speaker, there is a list of the Select Committee. That is the Honorable Moses Rotich, the chair, that is myself. Honorable Edina Tanui was the vice chairperson. Honorable Kiprotich Rogony, the Honorable ranking member Cheriot Bates, representing the great people of Ainamoi. Honorable Rogony represent Sigawet Ward, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Edina Tanui is a nominated MCA from Waldai Ward, Mr. Speaker, and the Honorable Whip Emeritus, Honorable Gilbert Ngetich, representing Kisiara Ward, Mr. Speaker. We have annexures, Mr. Speaker, of the motion. The number of persons as on annexure 2, Mr. Speaker, who signed. The annexure 4, Mr. Speaker, on the motion, Mr. Speaker. Invitation to appear before the select committee. We indeed invited, Mr. Speaker, we invited Dr. Wesley Bor, Mr. Speaker, to appear for fair administration of justice, Mr. Speaker, and he found it fit that, according to him, Mr. Speaker, he didn't wish to appear before this select committee. That is on annexure 5, Mr. Speaker. On annexure 5B, Mr. Speaker, is another letter, Mr. Speaker. You realize that we had challenges initially, so we had 2 letters inviting him twice, Mr. Speaker. Then invitation to appear, that is annexure 6, Mr. Speaker, acknowledging the receipt of the letter, the 2 letters dated 10th and 17th, Mr. Speaker. However, this is a letter, a reply to the clerk of this county assembly, Mr. Speaker, when we indeed invited Dr. Wesley Bor to appear, Mr. Speaker. However, I regret to inform you that I will not be in a position to appear before the committee following my resignation as the county secretary and head of County Public Service Board through a notice, Mr. Speaker. So he indeed opted. A notice of resignation, Mr. Speaker, has been 2 annexed. There is also the annexure 8, Mr. Speaker. That was your communication on the same. The affidavits are annexed 9A, Mr. Speaker, from the witnesses, Mr. Speaker, 9A, 9B, 9C, 9D. These are a copy of the minutes, Mr. Speaker, or annexed 10B. The reply from Chanzo and Victor Company Advocate, Mr. Speaker, have been annexed 11A, 11B, Mr. Speaker, still from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Also, a copy of the letter, annexed 12A to ESCC.
Exercised responsibility as the head of public service, and it's unfortunate in one of the witnesses who appeared before us via video link, she wept saying it took us long for us to act as a county assembly to protect their interest. Mr. Speaker, I only want to bring to the attention of this House 2 things. One, we noted there are some staff who were transferred by Dr. Bor and they have never been released to the various departments. They were not accepted. Case in point is Lasoi, Engineer Lasoi was moved from PSM to water, but the chief officer in charge of water did not sign or receive this letter to release the employee to the Department of Water. Mr. Speaker, I'm in agreement with the committee recommendation that within 30 days, the County Public Service Board, the County Human Resource Management, that is the CHR MAC, and the respective chief officers should be looked at. Most of these officers who were transferred, some of them ought to be retained where they were. We have one, Engineer Mitei, who does not even know where he is now because he was moved from water to administration, and the process was flawed. So that means Engineer Mitei is not an employee at the Department of Water, neither is he in charge in the Department of Public Service Management. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, Dr. Bor, upon the motion that was submitted by the member before this House, he hastily resigned. It's unfortunate because one, where he was supposed to account for all the things that he did which were wrong, he opted to leave service. And as a House, we felt we had to hold him account. notice of resignation means within the 30-day period, we could still follow this individual for him to account to all the deeds that he did. Mr. Speaker, lastly, Dr. Bor, late last night, hastily ran to court to try and stop this House from deliberating on this matter. I know one of the things that he's trying to raise is we did not give him time. And before you communicated, during your communication, Mr. Speaker, you can look at the chairs before this House. He had been invited, according to the law, that he ought to have come here, explain himself before this House, take the final vote, whether to have him out or to retain him as a county secretary. But unfortunately, in one of the instances, he wrote to the committee that he was not going to appear before this committee. Again, we went further as a committee. We even gave him the final copy of this document via email. He never replied. Mr. Speaker, we acted following the law. But unfortunately, this individual opted to try and usurp powers that is not his, try even to curtail this House. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, there is a court case in the Employment and Labor Relations Court of Kenya at Kericho. Case number ELRCPET 006/2023, citation Betsy Chebet and Wesley Bor and 4 others versus Kericho Public Service Board and the County Assembly of Kericho in 3 hours. Mr. Speaker, Lady Justice Wasilwa, in her ruling number 89, stated, Mr. Speaker, that the orders, in my view, is not in any way also a way also to bar the respondents in proceeding to initiate proper respondents. You know, that was this county assembly, Mr. Speaker. It gave us an opportunity to initiate a process again and ensure this individual is removed. Mr. Speaker, as I end, I want to also draw to your attention the submission of the report by the Select Committee. This is a communication, Mr. Speaker. And let me read it to you. I refer to the above matter and our email of 28 July 2024. Please find the attached hard copy of the report of the Select Committee submitted pursuant to Section 43B of the County Government Act of 2012 for your perusal. This is in compliance with Kericho County Assembly Standing Order number 77 for a hearing. 4. Please note that the special sitting to deliberate on this matter will be on Wednesday, 31st July at 9 a.m. pursuant to the County Assembly Standing Order number 76, 9, and read together with the Standing Order number 77, 1, 2B. You should be given an opportunity to be heard before the County Assembly. This, Mr. Speaker, is what we did as a committee. It's unfortunate Dr. Bor never appeared, and as I second this motion, I want to urge this House, when the time comes to vote, let us vote to impeach this individual. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Honorable Rogon, for seconding the motion. Honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on the removal of Wesley Kaibor, Doctor, as the Kericho County Secretary. So the floor is open for contribution and debate. The Honorable Chiliad.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, and of course, by extension, the great people of Ainamoi. Mr. Speaker, I stand here, Mr. Speaker, solidly behind my chairperson, the Honorable Moses Rotich, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am one of the members of the 5 bench select committee, Mr. Speaker, to hear the allegations and that was put forward to hear the case of the Honorable Paul B, representing the great people of Kapsaos, Mr. Speaker, and whether the allegation holds any water, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today, Mr. Speaker, maybe to remind ourselves, Mr. Speaker, I swore in this county assembly, Mr. Speaker, that I will protect, defend, Mr. Speaker, and uphold the Constitution of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, and any other relevant laws, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, an individual that we are talking today, Mr. Speaker, is an individual who defied all the available laws of this land, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in fact, the word defied does not even befit this gentleman, Mr. Speaker. He defiled the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, by usurping powers, Mr. Speaker, that he doesn't have, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you can imagine someone forging minutes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honorable member for Kapsaos Ward, and I want to tell the people of Kapsaos Ward, Mr. Speaker, I think for the first time they now have a representative that speaks to the issues that affect the people of Kapsaos, Mr. Speaker, and the people of this county, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I sat through the hearing of all those witnesses, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, I think this motion was even supposed to have been brought maybe as early as 2022, immediately this administration took over, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you had the witnesses that came before this honorable committee, Mr. Speaker, then, Mr. Speaker, sometimes you even wonder where humanity has gone, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a person that has always been known as a teetotaler, Mr. Speaker. This is a person that always go to church, Mr. Speaker. And I want to repeat here, Mr. Speaker, that I think our churches also, Mr. Speaker, should take time to even vet those that they call pastors, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you can imagine you are moving a staff from one office to another, Mr. Speaker, just because of favors that she didn't, and I'm using the word she, Mr. Speaker, selectively, because, you know, some of these people, Mr. Speaker, were moved from one office to another just because of sexual favors, Mr. Speaker. You know, I think that is despicable, Mr. Speaker. When you had the witnesses that appeared before this committee, Mr. Speaker, then you hate being an MCA, Mr. Speaker, because we've led these people to defile this county, Mr. Speaker, all these other times, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in a nutshell, Mr. Speaker, all the allegations that were put forward, Mr. Speaker, by the Honorable Bolby, Mr. Speaker, were substantiated, Mr. Speaker. All the allegations, beginning with abuse of office, Mr. Speaker, you cannot, the county secretary, Mr. Speaker, cannot, he has no powers to move an officer within the department. His powers, Mr. Speaker, hence moving an officer from one department to another department, Mr. Speaker. But of course, that movement or redeployment, Mr. Speaker, must be sanctioned by the Committee on Human Resource Advisory Committee, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, when minutes were brought before our committee, Mr. Speaker, and you can look at the annexes, Mr. Speaker, there is no single minutes that confirms an officer being moved from a department to another department, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, an accountant coming here, Mr. Speaker, the only mistake an accountant did, Mr. Speaker, was to refuse to validate a payment, Mr. Speaker, that the county secretary was pushing like hell, Mr. Speaker, to be paid. And the work was never done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since the officer, Mr. Speaker, is the responsible civil servant, Mr. Speaker, he called the chief officer of the concerned department, and the chief officer did confirm that there is no work of that nature that has been done, Mr. Speaker. That is the only single mistake, Mr. Speaker, that an accountant did, that gave him a transfer from the finance department, Mr. Speaker, to go to a certain health center, Mr. Speaker. That is the kind of a county secretary, Mr. Speaker, that we had. Mr. Speaker, a county secretary, Mr. Speaker, can just wake up one day. Mr. Speaker, you know I'm a chair for Committee on Education, Mr. Speaker. We had that Deputy Director, Ellen Chepkiri, Mr. Speaker, a lady that has served education with zeal, Mr. Speaker. A lady, Mr. Speaker, that went to interview, Mr. Speaker. He was interviewed by the County Public Service Board, and he was promoted, Mr. Speaker, to be a Deputy Director of Education, rising up, Mr. Speaker, beating all odds from being awarded administrator, Mr. Speaker. But the lady, because of some issues, Mr. Speaker, was transferred to be an administrator of a deputy governor's office, Mr. Speaker. Then you question, where is the humanity, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, and the person who was brought to act in that capacity where he was, Mr. Speaker, is a person that went to interview together with this lady. And the lady became number one, Mr. Speaker. The other person was not taken, Mr. Speaker, by merit. Someone is coming to act on your behalf, Mr. Speaker, and you are being moved to be an administrator. You can imagine being an administrator all the way from a deputy director, Mr. Speaker. This is the county secretary that the Kericho County government had, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, Mr. Speaker, how can you forge minutes, Mr. Speaker? How can you forge minutes that I was in a meeting? There are some 4 CECs that never attended the meeting that was dealing with the Londiani accident, Mr. Speaker. And those officers, Mr. Speaker, they came to testify during the ADO committee. I am privileged, Mr. Speaker, because I was a member of the ADO committee that looked at the Londiani issue, Mr. Speaker. And the chief and the CECs came, Mr. Speaker, and said, and some CEOs that we were not present in the meeting, Mr. Speaker. But when you look at the signatures, Mr. Speaker, these are the signatures that were forged, Mr. Speaker. In fact, one of them, Mr. Speaker, said that he prayed during that meeting, and he was not there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have sworn in affidavits in this report, Mr. Speaker. If you get time when you retire, Mr. Speaker, you will see the sworn in affidavits of those 4 witnesses, Mr. Speaker, and it is contained in the ad hoc report of Londiani, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so what we are just saying, Mr. Speaker, is that I want to urge this county assembly, Mr. Speaker, that let's rise to the occasion. Mr. Speaker, we were debating on whether this guy has resigned or not, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you've heard those, we've quoted here, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my chair, Mr. Speaker. And I also want to thank the great people of Tendano Soget, Mr. Speaker. When you send such bright minds to this county assembly, Mr. Speaker, minds that can never be compromised, Mr. Speaker, we want to thank the people of Tendano Soget. I think for the first time, they are voting in an individual, Mr. Speaker, who lives by his ideals, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you've heard, we've quoted some case laws, Mr. Speaker, in this report on whether the county secretary has tendered this resignation. Is that a resignation, Mr. Speaker? And we've quoted some case laws, around 3 or 4 case laws, Mr. Speaker, that giving a notice of resignation, Mr. Speaker, and yet you are undergoing a disciplinary process, Mr. Speaker, you know, the disciplinary must proceed, Mr. Speaker. And that is one of the issues that we are asking ourselves. Now that Dr. Bauro, Mr. Speaker, in fact, my conscience does not even allow me to call him doctor, Mr. Speaker, because a doctor cannot even do 0.0009% of what this individual has done, Mr. Speaker. I know you are one of the doctors, Mr. Speaker, but you are a very sharp doctor, and I know you cannot even do such things, Mr. Speaker. So the question was, this guy is still in office, Mr. Speaker, and you cannot resign, Mr. Speaker, and you've meted atrocities to the public service of this county, Mr. Speaker. We will follow you wherever you go, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and we also want to use this opportunity that the Constitution is very clear, Mr. Speaker, on the separations of powers, Mr. Speaker. The county assembly is independent, Mr. Speaker. The county executive is also very independent, Mr. Speaker. And our judiciary is also independent. And we want to call out our judiciary, Mr. Speaker. They cannot purport, Mr. Speaker, to stop a process that is taking place at the county assembly. Let them wait for the report, the verdict of this county assembly, so that if you have issues, Mr. Speaker, you go and challenge in court. We cannot leave, and I think, Mr. Speaker, going into the future, Mr. Speaker, this judiciary should also be held accountable, Mr. Speaker. We will call them by their names. We know of one, Mr. Speaker, that has always been notorious in this county, Mr. Speaker, and we need to call the names of those people, Mr. Speaker. You cannot interfere with the process of the county assembly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the seats before you, Mr. Speaker, here were meant for the witness to come and appear and, Mr. Speaker, defend themselves for 2 hours, Mr. Speaker. But he failed. Instead of coming here, Mr. Speaker, he's rushing to our courts, Mr. Speaker. So I think, Mr. Speaker, we need to inform even our county officers, Mr. Speaker, that the train has left the station. And going into the future, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure you, I swore in this county assembly, Mr. Speaker, probably I may not want to say with a lot of certainty, Mr. Speaker, that during this term, Mr. Speaker, you can never know where God has prepared us to be from 2027, Mr. Speaker, and I say that with a lot of confidence, that we will do our part, Mr. Speaker, and this should be a warning to the county executive committee members, Mr. Speaker, that anyone who will try, Mr. Speaker, to in any way, Mr. Speaker, interfere with the resources that is meant for the great people of this county, Mr. Speaker, he or she, Mr. Speaker, will follow this process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I know there are a few of them that are under our radar, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell you, there are a few of them that are under our radar, Mr. Speaker, and we will never, Mr. Speaker, in any way pack down, Mr. Speaker, when the resources of this county is being divided right, left, and center, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, because the report is self-explanatory, Mr. Speaker, I want to inform the honorable members here that a time has come that you need to make a decision that is neither popular or safe, Mr. Speaker, but your conscience tells you that you need to make such a decision, Mr. Speaker. We represent the people, the only people, Mr. Speaker, and I've always said here, Mr. Speaker, and I will say without even numbers, Mr. Speaker, that I will only respect God and the people of Ainamoi who elected me, Mr. Speaker. Any other person, Mr. Speaker, that come and cross my way, here, especially in the remaining 2-3 years, Mr. Speaker, I will, Mr. Speaker, nitaanguka nayo. That is the new word in town, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I end, I want to promise you, Mr. Speaker, that we are prepared. Personally, I am prepared. And some of the few members of the county assembly, Mr. Speaker, we are prepared to walk this journey, Mr. Speaker. We will fight this cause, Mr. Speaker, to the last drop of our blood, Mr. Speaker, because we sitting back, Mr. Speaker, and looking at how things are going on, Mr. Speaker, we will never do that again, Mr. Speaker. So help me God. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support this report, and the county secretary, Mr. Speaker, should not even left office alone, Mr. Speaker. After a year, Mr. Speaker, I think the county secretary should even be taken by other investigative agencies, Mr. Speaker. And now the recommendation of this committee, Mr. Speaker, I think the recommendation of the committee, we want to inform the county executive and the appointing authority that whatever we have recommended here, Mr. Speaker, has timelines. In the next 30 days, Mr. Speaker, we will follow up with people here, Mr. Speaker. Anyone who is going not to implement any of the resolution that has been passed by this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, will be our guest in this county assembly. Thank you, and may God bless this Kericho County. And I want to thank the members today, Mr. Speaker. These are the warriors and the heroes of this county, Mr. Speaker. I know the rest were called to go and, Mr. Speaker, try to curtail this process, Mr. Speaker, but I want to thank these people. When history of this county will be written, Mr. Speaker, you will have a chapter or two that you stood with the people of this county when they needed you the most. Thank you, and may God bless you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. The floor is still open. The Honorable Gilbert Ngetich, and then we will finalize. And then I'll give to Honorable Vincent Korir. I saw the hand of Honorable Amos Birir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute towards this regular process in which it was undertaken by the Select Committee, which I'm a member, number 5, Mr. Speaker, called Gilbert Ngetich, MCA from Kishara Ward. As I speak now, Mr. Speaker, I speak representing the good people of Kishara, who are also employed in this county government, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, out of what has been highlighted there to be the shortcomings of the outgoing county secretary, Mr. Speaker, I confirm the atrocities he made to the staffs of this county government, Mr. Speaker, sir. I was overtaken by emotion at the point, Mr. Speaker, when one lady called Jacqueline Leitich, whom we really had a meeting with them virtually, Mr. Speaker, and she asked a very touching questions that where were you where was this assembly when all these atrocities happened until some of them resigned? Mr. Speaker, this county government we are protecting for posterity, and we also strengthen the precedents that whoever acting ultra fires in the office offered will face the real wrath of the assembly, Mr. Speaker. I don't actually contradict myself in any way, Mr. Speaker, that out of the staffs whom we really met in this investigation, about 30, Mr. Speaker, whatever I learned about the county secretary was really so devastating. I haven't questioned about the issue of him becoming a bishop, Mr. Speaker, since I heard he was a deputy bishop in some church existing in this county, Mr. Speaker. I really request the very church to demote him ASAP, because the implications he has really made in this assembly is actually so demeaning to our staffs. And also when we are given an office, like the office we are given by the common wananchi, we are supposed to use it wisely. But in this case, Mr. Speaker, the county secretary acted ultra fires in all manner of kind of redeployment, demotions and promotions. He decided to do individually without passing the constituted body, that is CHR mark, in this case, Mr. Speaker, which gives the designs and policies that are really being used in terms of employment, the relation between the employee and the employer, Mr. Speaker. So in this case, Mr. Speaker, the actions taken by the county secretary was really from his office, his mind, and after his lipping, Mr. Speaker. The county secretary was actually said, Mr. Speaker, that he could arrive one morning, and if he called you and you fail to pick a call, you will be transferred in the morning, Mr. Speaker. That is, Mr. Speaker, an action of inhumanity, and we really condemn using all powers, Mr. Speaker. I was perturbed when I was told the bishop even could call someone's wife who is a staff to come to the office at late as 8, Mr. Speaker, sir. 8 p.m., Mr. Speaker, sir. When we expect all our wives to really be cooking for our children at home, Mr. Speaker. That is inhumanity, and we really feel like asking that this guy and those who are really presenting themselves in the same manner should follow the suit. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to really seek that we will actually do an intervention to all the process existing in this county. We are really demeaning our children. We are busy trying to build a nation by really encouraging our children to read, for them to be given employment. But it will include that such an issues, Mr. Speaker. I'm very sure we are really proving him to be just an impetus of what will come again. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I speak this time, Mr. Speaker, I have heard of that the county secretary is alleging that he has not been given a fair time to come and actually represent himself, to defend himself. We did as a committee. He refused. He wrote a letter indicating that he will not make to the he had resigned as an HRM officer, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, a notice of resignation is not resignation. Mr. Speaker, when you give a notice of resignation, you are still in office, and you can even transact a business whenever you are required. But when you really want to be seen out of that particular office, you just pay the notice month to the employer and exit ASAP. And it could have rendered us useless as a committee, Mr. Speaker. So for the committee, Mr. Speaker, we were investigating an officer who gave a notice of 1 month before the 1 month elapsed, Mr. Speaker. So as we continue, we are really within the law, and I presume that he must get it right today, that we also know what happens. And if he was actually not ready to visit the committee to come and defend himself, Mr. Speaker, why is he ready going around these courts existing here trying to defend a position in which he exited? It seems that he wants to revoke the notice and also be an officer for the children of this county, Mr. Speaker, who have suffered Some were crying here, Mr. Speaker, and we could end up crying even with them, Mr. Speaker. So I really pray that this county assembly to confirm the impeachment of one Dr. Wesley Bor, and I also pray that because what we really agree in this world, Mr. Speaker, will happen in heaven. If it happens, I go to heaven, Mr. Speaker, and I find Dr. Rob, I will know that is not heaven. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Vincent Korir, and then I'll give to Honorable Amos Breed, and then Honorable Maritim from Gypsy, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute in this motion. And Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the select committee that did this report. Actually, I confirm that they did a very good job. And the reports that we have been read to in this house, I do confirm that the findings are true. And actually, Dr. Wesley Bor must go. And Mr. Speaker, sir, when I look at the issues that happened, either before or during this process, actually, Dr. Wesley Bor resigned this month when we impeached him temporarily using in the motion that was presented by Honorable B. Now, I was asking myself, Mr. Speaker, that why did Mr. Wesley Bor not resign in January or in the other months? There is a reason. This guy was trying to evade the process because he knew that as the assembly, we had followed the right procedures under the law to actually impeach him. And he knew that he's not going to escape this. So this issue of resigning was avoiding investigation and getting justice to the victims that maybe he has meted a lot of injustice to them, like the workers and all those people who have been working under him. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the process, as even read in the report, Dr. Wesley Bor failed to appear. As far as the assembly is concerned, the process was followed very well as per the law. But this guy is trying to sabotage the process itself by not appearing so that he can try to blame either the assembly or trying to throw blame to someone that maybe was not given a fair hearing. I can assure you that this house is fair. We are a fair house. The select committee were objective, and I know they were doing a very good job. But because he is used to shortcuts and maybe even using excess powers, so he thought he is going to use it in this assembly again. Mr. Speaker, sir, even using the courts. Because sometimes if we had done something that is not good and it goes to court, we could have accepted if there's a process that we don't follow as the assembly. But in this process, I know the select panel and the assembly did the right thing, and he knew that he's not going to escape. But what I can confirm is the guy is now in our hands, and we are going to impeach him today, and he must go. Mr. Speaker, sir, I was looking at the 40 minutes during the Londiani accidents, and here we have an annexure 9B, which I have read, and there is an affidavit from one Alphonse Kuriro-Otich, and he swore the affidavit stating that there was no meeting that happened during that time. And actually, Honorable Chirchir Judith, Honorable Natanui, Honorable Daniel Rob were not in the meeting. When we say forgery, then what is it? This is a forgery because there is an affidavit. How does he want us to prove? Or even if the investigating anybody, even if you are not an investigator, this is just something that is so verifiable. Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't want to take much because all this is summarized as in these few words that Mr. Bor must go.
All right, the Honorable Amos Birir, and then I give to the Honorable Maritim. And then I give to Honorable Fancy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. And I'm here to stand for my people of Kapkatet, and I have to talk on behalf of them. Actually, I want to support a point. This house is a house of making rules and laws. But last time we talked about County Secretary, Mr. Paul. But still, we are continue repeating the same points. What Mr. Paul, why is he resisting? Last time we said this man must go, but he is still resisting in the office. These office belong to the Wananchi of Kericho. Why somebody has been mentioned by honorable members to move away, he is still resisting, which means he's laughing at us. Yes, and seeing that honorable members are not united. What I'm requesting, honorable members, we are here because we were sent by people, and we are here to defend the properties of the people. And I'm really surprised when some honorable members ran away and they were sent to defend the properties of the people. You can find some honorable members running away from this house as if they are not members of this house. We are here to represent our people and to defend their properties. And I don't know the reason why, when it is the time of defending this house, people run away. We need to know those members who are running away from this office. And we want to repeat against Paul Masco. Paul Masco. Why is he resisting in our office? Which means this man already has made very many mistakes and is still resisting. Why today he ran to the court trying to defend himself? I want to support those people who have investigated and who have found that he has done a lot in this county. And still he don't want to go peaceably. This man moved peaceably to your place, look for another place because these people have rejected you. Please attend another place where you can make a lot of mistakes. Not this county of Kericho. We are here and we are standing firm. Especially myself representing the great people of Kapkatet. I am not going back. This motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, as much as I don't have much to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, I can summarize this report as a good report. And by this report, Mr. Speaker, sir, this character called Dr. Bor, Mr. Speaker, sir, is an adulterer, is a liar, is a law broker, is a rapist, is a thief. So this guy, Mr. Speaker, sir, should not live near the human race, Mr. Speaker, sir. He should be thrown away, not working with the human race, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, thank you, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion.
The order honorable members, the Honorable Fancy, and then I'll give to the Honorable Philip Mutai. If you will allow me, we can, and then the mover of the motion, and then now the mover of the motion, and then I'll give to the current mover to reply. Proceed, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this chance to stand with the good women of Kericho County. I'm nominated member for gender top-up, and I've been sitting here, Mr. Speaker, sir, and listening to the motion from the very good committee which were selected and headed by Honorable Moses Rotich, that Dr. Bor must go home. And I've really searched, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I got one, and I should read the Sexual Offense Act number 3 of 2006, number 23, subsection 1. Any person who is being in a position of authority or holding a public office who persistently make any sexual advance or any request which he or she knows or has a reasonable ground to know or unwelcome is guilty of an offense of sexual harassment and shall be liable to imprisonment for terms of not less than 3 years or to a fine of not less than 100,000 shillings or both. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm reading this because in this Kericho County, we've been talking about the sexual harassment, which is very rampant, and I thought it was rampant in the villages alone. And I'm really shocked today to know that even in our offices, the public offices which we are holding is very rampant. And one Jacqueline Leitich is my neighbor at home, and she never even mentioned to me that there was such sexual abuses in the office. And I really pity these women and all these officers, because for sure, where is the code of conduct to this said person? Did he even sign the code of conduct? Did he even read even that, the code of conduct? Because him is overstepping his mandate in the office by transferring people anyhowly, redeploying the staffs anyhowly, false information from the person, no minutes, no even disciplinary action to the said staff who are transferred. Mr. Speaker, sir, this report is watertight. This report is very elaborate, and one Dr. Bor must go home like yesterday. We should not even waste time talking about the said person, because all this amounts to the abuse of office. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, without wasting time, we want Dr. Bor to go home today, not even tomorrow. And Mr. Speaker, sir, if you want equity, come with clean hands. We really wanted to do justice to all, justice to the staff and justice even to him. But now he really overstepped his mandates. Mr. Speaker, sir, one Dr. Bor must go home. He really abused his office. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I support the motion.
Thank you, the Honorable Fancy, the Honorable Philip Mutai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity, and by extension, the great people of Kipchimchim. Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to, first, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the Select Committee, led by my good friend, Honorable Moses Rotit, for really, at least, elevating this House to a very high standard for because of the good work that they did to this report. Mr. Speaker, sir, one Dr. Wesley Bor had the opportunity to come here and vindicate himself, but he failed to do so. So this is just but a confirmation of an early impeachment to him. And I think this House is fair enough, because we had invited him to come and vindicate himself before this House. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, is just to tell my colleagues who are very notorious in absenting themselves whenever we are deliberating very serious issues in this House. Mr. Speaker, sir, we will be doing a lot of justice to the Kericho County workers and women of this Kericho County by confirming the impeachment of that one Dr. Wesley Bor. I think Dr. Bor must go without even blinking an eye. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think at one point during my my working within the ward, I encountered Dr. Bor preaching in a certain church. And then I wonder what kind of Christian he is when in the 10 Commandments, which is well written in a very simple language, that thou shalt not bear false witness, and then thou shalt not steal, and then he calls himself pastor of African Gospel Church. So I just want to write a letter, Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to write a letter to the headquarters of African Gospel Church. If he is indeed a licensed preacher, to be expelled with immediate effect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
All right, thank you, the Honorable Philip Mutai, the Honorable Paul B.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity you've given me and the great people of Kapsaos. Allow me, Honorable Speaker, first to thank the honorable members, especially the Select Committee, on a well-detailed report that they've tabled in this House, led by my good friend, Honorable Moses from Teteno. Honorable Speaker, mine, as a member of the motion, I really want to thank the office of the clerk, because when I gave a notice, they did forward it to your office, and indeed the House Business Committee committed the same to this floor. Honorable Speaker, I really want to thank these members for allowing my motion to be tabled here, and they deliberated in the same. Now that all the allegations which were made against one Dr. Wesley Bor have been confirmed. Honorable Speaker, I had an opportunity of one appearing, before them. And indeed, I saw the kind of work they were doing. They were very smart in some way. Honorable Speaker, this one man, Honorable Dr. Wesley Bor, must go. And he must go. It's not about, dilly-dally. When I came in the morning...
Yes, I give you an opportunity so that you allow, I give to the mover of the motion to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir, for the opportunity you have granted me, Mr. Speaker, so that I can rise to support the motion by Chairman Select Committee, Honorable Moses, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, indeed, this is a reckoning moment in this third assembly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the first assembly, Mr. Speaker, they made an history of impeaching one CC who was in charge of water for gross violation of the Constitution and abuse of office, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, those were men and women of substance, Mr. Speaker, who, when they decided to do something, they did, Mr. Speaker. Came to the second assembly, Mr. Speaker. We tried several attempts, Mr. Speaker, despite challenges, Mr. Speaker. There was some of the CCs who had abused their offices, Mr. Speaker. They violated the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, because most of the members were not objective, Mr. Speaker, and they were led by their stomachs, not by their head, Mr. Speaker, we failed several times, Mr. Speaker, even to impeach even the smallest person, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, come to this third assembly, Mr. Speaker, and I want to echo this county assembly, Mr. Speaker. Although people think that they are chokers, Mr. Speaker, but when they mean something, Mr. Speaker, like what they have meant today, Mr. Speaker. I think we'll be going down in the annals of history, Mr. Speaker, as the third assembly, Mr. Speaker, who mean business when they decided, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, while I was contributing on the motion of impeachment, Mr. Speaker, I once said, Mr. Speaker, this is a warning we are sending to all the public officers, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, if they try to abuse officers, Mr. Speaker, this State Assembly is there on their neck, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, we swore, Mr. Speaker, to defend and to protect the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, Mr. Speaker, and it cannot be supreme to others and not some and not all of us, Mr. Speaker. We are governed by the supreme law, Mr. Speaker, and by all the time we should protect, uphold the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, and to live according to the laws of the land, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, if anyone, Mr. Speaker, either in the executive, Mr. Speaker, who are trying to play monkey games, Mr. Speaker, and not to protect and to do what are mandated, Mr. Speaker, we want to warn them and tell them, Mr. Speaker, we are not joking, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to echo the Select Committee and the Secretariat, Mr. Speaker. I think this is one of the watertight report, Mr. Speaker, and working and doing research, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the allegations, Mr. Speaker, which was highlighted by the mover of the motion, Mr. Speaker, has been substantiated. Mr. Speaker, all the counts which were highlighted, Mr. Speaker, has been fully substantiated, Mr. Speaker, with beyond any reasonable doubt, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was contemplating, Mr. Speaker, when we received a notice a notice of resignation, Mr. Speaker, and we were at a crossroad whether to proceed with the impeachment or not, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, when you go to annexure number 7, Mr. Speaker, annexure number 7, Mr. Speaker, was an acceptance letter, Mr. Speaker, by the governor, Mr. Speaker, for the notice of resignation, Mr. Speaker. And I go in English, Mr. Speaker, a notice, Mr. Speaker, is not a resignation, it is an intention, Mr. Speaker. A mere statement, Mr. Speaker. If he was serious to resign, he could have downtown the tools, Mr. Speaker. On this acceptance letter by His Excellency, the Governor, Mr. Speaker, and I wanted to read so that it can be captured well on our answer, Mr. Speaker, was that acceptance of resignation. Reference is made to your letter dated 8 July 2024, in which you tendered your resignation as the County Secretary and Head of Public Service. I wish to inform you, that is the His Excellency, the Governor, that your request has been accepted and shall take effect on 7th August 2024. What does that mean, Mr. Speaker? He's still in office until when? 7th of August, Mr. Speaker. And after the expiry of the notice period, and your salary shall be paid up to 7th August, Mr. Speaker. Our intention was to remove this man from office, Mr. Speaker. You cannot tell us you have given out a notice for resignation and you are still drawing salary, Mr. Speaker. In fact, Mr. Speaker, that is, I don't want to use the term which Honorable Bolby used, Mr. Speaker, but I think the guy is trying to urinate on our age, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, if he was serious, Mr. Speaker, he could have downtown his tools, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so he's still in office until 7th of August 2024, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when now this allegation has been substantiated, Mr. Speaker, it is with immediate effect, Mr. Speaker, that it should be removed from office, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I want to echo the case laws highlighted by the committee, Mr. Speaker, and to justify, Mr. Speaker, the reason why this Select Committee must continue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, maybe because of the intention of us moving the motion, Mr. Speaker, it just gave us a notice of 30 days, Mr. Speaker, bearing in mind that the life of the select committee was 10 days, Mr. Speaker. How do we know if we will have left this process without continuing and the 10 days elapsed? We may have rescinded the resignation letter, Mr. Speaker, and say that I was under duress, or I was acting upon maybe fear, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the counts which was highlighted by the first mover of the motion, Mr. Speaker, has been substantiated fully with facts by the select committee, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say thank you to the committee, Mr. Speaker, and I think this is the way to go, honorable members. We need to be objective always, Mr. Speaker. It should not be about what I used to term as primitive loyalty, Mr. Speaker. Irrespective of that, Mr. Speaker, we should move forward, Mr. Speaker, and work, Mr. Speaker. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, when the time comes, Mr. Speaker, everybody will carry his cross, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, like some of us, Mr. Speaker, we are being clapped on here and there, but when it comes to the time of campaign and election, Mr. Speaker, it is only you, your code, and what you have done, Mr. Speaker. And we don't want whatever we are planning to do to be hijacked by people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, some of the services were interrupted in our county health facilities, Mr. Speaker, when there was transfers of medics, Mr. Speaker, by this, Mr. Speaker, by this one Honorable Dr. Paul, Mr. Speaker. Services were interrupted, Mr. Speaker. The morale of our county staffs and the entire human resource fraternity, the morale went down. And when the morale went down, Mr. Speaker, what is the effect? The effect, it will affect adversely to the members because their services are interrupted, Mr. Speaker. And when the services are interrupted, there is nothing going on, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, anybody who will cross our way, who is trying to block and to be a stumbling block on our way, Mr. Speaker, two things: we either anguka nayo, Mr. Speaker, or mangetu chita. Others let me end and support the motion. Thank you.
Order, honorable members. I now give to order. I now give to the mover of the motion to reply.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to once more reply to this motion that is before us. Mr. Speaker, I will not remain silent, Mr. Speaker, when there are lamentations, Mr. Speaker, there are cries, there are atrocities, Mr. Speaker, being committed to our people, Mr. Speaker. The most integral part in the county, Mr. Speaker, is the public service, Mr. Speaker. We have several devolved functions, Mr. Speaker. Top on this line, Mr. Speaker, is the health sector, Mr. Speaker. The most essential service, Mr. Speaker. Anytime you disrupt the good working cohesion and environment of a service delivery, Mr. Speaker, by transferring someone, Mr. Speaker, who handles life, Mr. Speaker. Yes, the person or the patient who seeks such service, Mr. Speaker, may at one point be denied by transferring the service provider, Mr. Speaker. This committee, Mr. Speaker, acted in a manner anchored in law, Mr. Speaker, with a lot of objectivity, Mr. Speaker. The mover of the motion, Honorable Paul B., Mr. Speaker, if he can bear as witness, Mr. Speaker, that we stripped him honorable member status that day, Mr. Speaker, and branded him a witness number 1, Mr. Speaker. If he can testify and come, Mr. Speaker, he finished 3 bottles of water, Mr. Speaker, trying to justify that indeed he was the owner of the motion, Mr. Speaker. What am I saying, Mr. Speaker? Abundance of caution, Mr. Speaker, guided us throughout the delivery of this report, Mr. Speaker. If we are silent, we took an oath, Mr. Speaker, as a House. And today, I wish to applaud the honorable members who are here today. You are indeed true heroes and heroines, Mr. Speaker, who are standing for what is just, what is fair, what is verifiable, and what is accountable, Mr. Speaker. If we live, Mr. Speaker, we live for justice. Equally the same, Mr. Speaker, if we die for justice. So whether we live or die, Mr. Speaker, justice remains a common denominator, Mr. Speaker. Our staffs deserve the best of justice. Mr. Speaker, before us here are 2 seats, guided by the procedures and laws, Mr. Speaker, and equally the same, the abundance of caution, Mr. Speaker, that we didn't, in any case, wanted to skip any procedure, Mr. Speaker. We gave the person that is before us today for impeachment, the one Dr. Wesley Bor, a chance to defend himself. But he decided, Mr. Speaker, to run away. Yes, he will run away, Mr. Speaker, but he will never hide, Mr. Speaker. He cannot run away. He can seek as many injunctions as possible, Mr. Speaker. We have the separations of powers, Mr. Speaker, that the legislative arm of government, the executive arm of government, and the judicial arm of government, Mr. Speaker, its processes that are midway cannot be altered in any case and whatsoever, Mr. Speaker. I want to urge the honorable members that is before us today that I seek concurrence and total support in approving and supporting this motion in totality, Mr. Speaker, to restore dignity in this county, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Bor must be out. To restore the morale of our people, Mr. Speaker, Dr. Bor must honorably step aside. Mr. Speaker, as to whether Dr. Bor is still in office or not, case laws that were properly researched, and I want to thank our Secretariat and our brilliant legal team, Mr. Speaker, for providing case laws that guided the committee sufficiently to come up with a tight case, Mr. Speaker. We remained as objective through service to the people that we took an oath to defend, to uphold, and to respect at all times, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the great people of Tendeno Soget, Mr. Speaker, whom I represent, Mr. Speaker, I say today that dignity must stand at all times. Mr. Speaker, as I end, so that, Mr. Speaker, protect me, Mr. Speaker, for the honorable members, so that I conclude, Mr. Speaker.
As you conclude, Doctor.
As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, we love this great county, Mr. Speaker. And when we have our people suffering, Mr. Speaker, yes, it will be unfair. Being silent, Mr. Speaker, in times of suffering is applauding the oppressor, Mr. Speaker. And for this case, Mr. Speaker, the oppressor that has made our people and our county suffer, Mr. Speaker, must be out of office. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you, the Honorable Dr. Moses Rotich, for replying to your motion. Honorable members, I have heard that the leadership are not here, but we have our deputy majority leader. We should assume the seat of the leader of majority, because when the leader of majority the honorable members, the honorable fancy, of course, when you need to deputize your majority. So if the leader of majority is not here, you are the leader of majority in this house, and therefore we should assume you are sitting. Yes, honorable members, now we must bring this matter to conclusion. And honorable members, I want to take you order, honorable members. Honorable members, let me remind you that you have the powers in your standing orders to remove the leaders, and therefore the standing orders are very clear, and that can be another meeting that you can maybe call outside this sitting. So, honorable members, let us proceed. Let's have order. I want to refer you to standing order number 76. And that will be standing order number 76, section, of course, from 7, where in our case, the county secretary, who is one Dr. Wesley Bor, has the right to appear and be represented before the select committee during this investigation. I'll read standing order number 8, which says, subsection 8, so it says, no further proceedings shall be taken on the matter if the select committee finds the allegations unsubstantiated. Number 9 says, if the select committee reports that it finds the allegations substantiated, the assembly shall afford the member in question here, is Dr. Wesley Bor, an opportunity to be heard and vote whether to approve the resolution requiring the member to be dismissed. In this case, the county assembly was ready, as I had earlier indicated, that there is a table before you in my left with a green tablecloth, and we expected the county secretary to be here to defend himself on the allegations. Therefore, honorable members, I now rise, which is to put the question. Which is that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on the removal of Wesley Bor, Doctor, as the Kericho County Secretary. Will as many as are of that similar opinion say aye? And will as many as are of that contrary opinion say nay? And the ayes have it. Honorable members, and now that as per our standing orders, a resolution has been adopted by this House requiring the governor of Kericho County to dismiss Wesley Bor as the county secretary. I now declare that Dr. Wesley Bor, county secretary of Kericho, stands impeached. And the communication shall be sent to the executive, specifically to the governor, to implement. So, honorable members, we will now proceed with the next order. Clerk, next order.
Order number 9, motion by Honorable Philip Mutai, Chairman, Ad hoc Committee.
In that manner, the Honorable Philip Mutai You can now table your motion, and honorable members, we look at our time, and we have had a discussion. We need to finalize it in a few minutes. So the Honorable Philip Mutai, you will stand, you may necessarily, you need to take us to your recommendations. Probably you just go through the report, go to the recommendations, go to the observations and then the recommendations so that we can proceed. In that manner, the Honorable Vincent Koska, please. So the Honorable Philip Mutai proceed. The Honorable Philip Mutai proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity to table the report on the ad hoc committee on insecurity within Kericho County. As you have guided, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I go to recommendations and observations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I go straight to 8.0. That is the committee's observations. The ad hoc committee made the following observations. One, that the county government of Kericho, through improvement of trade and use of enforcement officers in urban areas of the county, could help promote security of its citizens, despite security being a national function. Two, that there is need to improve on collaboration with the national government and its organs in service delivery to the citizens of Kericho. Three, that all the suspects involved in crime within Kericho County are common and are known to residents. Four, the administrative boundaries between Belgut sub-county and Ainamo sub-county has not been established. 5, the street lights in most urban centers are not functional and have contributed to the rampant security cases within Kericho County. 6, the Trade and Markets Act of 2014 has not been fully operationalized. I repeat, the Trade and Markets Act of 2014 has not fully operationalized. 7, the County Government Inspectorate Act of 2014 has not fully been implemented, I think. 8, the various witnesses who appeared before the County Assembly ad hoc committee on insecurity pointed out that there are criminal elements within the ranks of National Police Service.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to second this ad hoc committee report on insecurity in Kericho County. Mr. Speaker, security is a collective responsibility lying between the county government of Kericho and the national government. Security, Mr. Speaker, is an ex parte party. That is, Mr. Speaker, we need support from the stakeholders that are responsible, Mr. Speaker. During our time, as we were sitting, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, handled at national level, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we invited, indeed, the security team, the county police commandant and the rest, Mr. Speaker, to come and shed light on matters that were affecting our people in our county, Mr. Speaker. But it is unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, as the chair puts it, Mr. Speaker, that they failed to respond. We sought several advancements, Mr. Speaker, that one of our recommendations, Mr. Speaker, is that we do a petition as a county assembly, Mr. Speaker, to the Senate and the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, so that this matter is addressed. What we are supposed to address as a county, Mr. Speaker, we address the issue of security lights, the issue of operationalization of our municipalities, Mr. Speaker, we do as a county. What involves matters of lives of our people and the injuries that they have suffered, Mr. Speaker, be taken up at the Senate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we also realize the nature and the intensity of this report, Mr. Speaker. It was counter-accuse, Mr. Speaker. The border guys, Mr. Speaker, needs to be protected. They are stakeholders of our county, Mr. Speaker. They do business. They play a very crucial role, Mr. Speaker, and they have at all times given an equal space that is anchored in security, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand to second this report. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you, the Honorable Dr. Moses Otich. Honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the ad hoc committee on insecurities within key urban areas in Kericho County. The floor is open for debate. The Honorable Juliet Bett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, while I was rising up, Mr. Speaker, because you gave me an opportunity, I had one of the members saying that we should be very brief. Mr. Speaker, security, Mr. Speaker, should never be taken very lightly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sometimes, in fact, the honorable member who have just said, I normally provide him security within this town because he's new in town, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, however, Mr. Speaker, all said and done, I want to thank the committee led by the Honorable Philip Mutai, the member of the County Assembly, representing Kipchimchim Ward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a report that is well researched, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my eyes were drawn to the challenges that this committee, Mr. Speaker, went through because the mover of this motion, Mr. Speaker, began from observation and recommendation, but my eyes were drawn to the challenges that these people went through. One of the challenges, Mr. Speaker, was that the National Police Service failed to appear before this committee, Mr. Speaker. Number two, Mr. Speaker, that non-appearance of the county commissioner before the committee, Mr. Speaker. What are we saying, Mr. Speaker? If the people that is charged with providing security in our county, Mr. Speaker, are the ones who are failing to give information that will even assist them, Mr. Speaker, because majorly this is their major work, Mr. Speaker. If the police, Mr. Speaker, are not cooperating, if the county commandant, for example, does not send these people or himself to appear before this committee, Mr. Speaker, if the county commissioner who chairs the security in this county, Mr. Speaker, fails to appear before this ad hoc committee, Mr. Speaker, then what are we saying, Mr. Speaker? When you look at, Mr. Speaker, the observation, the committee were able to observe, Mr. Speaker, that some of the perpetrators of these crimes, Mr. Speaker, were donning police uniforms, Mr. Speaker. Some of these perpetrators were in full police uniform, Mr. Speaker. The county commissioner fails to appear before this committee and he chairs the security committee, Mr. Speaker. That it means, Mr. Speaker, that in security, the people that are supposed to provide security, Mr. Speaker, to our people are the people that makes our county insecure, Mr. Speaker. So I think the recommendation that the county assembly should petition the Senate, Mr. Speaker, to take up this matter is, in my view, Mr. Speaker, one of the best recommendations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the former CEC for trade, the Honorable Birech, Mr. Speaker, was attacked not more than a month ago, Mr. Speaker, in a place called Kisumu Road, Mr. Speaker, and his belongings, Mr. Speaker, his vehicle was ransacked. All the belongings, Mr. Speaker, were taken away by these people, Mr. Speaker, and he told me that he was wearing the attackers, Mr. Speaker, were wearing police uniform, Mr. Speaker. So what we need to do, Mr. Speaker, I think one of the recommendations, Mr. Speaker, if the county commissioner that we have is not able to chair security committee meeting, Mr. Speaker, I think the recommendation here should have been the county commissioner and the county commander, Mr. Speaker, should pack like yesterday and go back to where they come from, because they cannot provide security to our people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, second, Mr. Speaker, I have never seen any member of parliament bring up this issue in the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker. The 6 members of parliament that we have, Mr. Speaker, is sleeping on their job. I have never had a single member of parliament raising issues of insecurity in our county, Mr. Speaker. I think I had the senator raising the issues of insecurity some time back. But members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, that is why some of us are agitated, Mr. Speaker, because they are not representing the interest of the people of this county. The 6 of them, Mr. Speaker, including, let me not even mention the women, Mr. Speaker. Let deal with these members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. So I think security issues, and we want to tell them, Mr. Speaker, if the police will not be able to provide security. A classic example, Mr. Speaker, in where I come from, there is a police station called Ainamo, Mr. Speaker. These guys, Mr. Speaker, they are erecting roadblock from 6 to 8 in the evening, Mr. Speaker, just to collect 50 shillings from border men plying that route, Mr. Speaker. Who, Mr. Speaker, if you ask yourself, is there any, Mr. Speaker, crime that is being committed during that time, Mr. Speaker? Crimes have been committed beyond level, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Birech was attacked around 1, Mr. Speaker. That is the time when these people attacks our people, Mr. Speaker. But you find a full police officer erecting a roadblock just to collect the 50 shillings in Ainamo police station, Mr. Speaker. But I want to thank the county commander, Mr. Speaker, because when I raised these issues to him, Mr. Speaker, he called the insensitive OCS of that place, Mr. Speaker, and we told them, Mr. Speaker, there are only 2 options. They either provide security or they move in our police station. We will take care of our security, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, and may God bless this committee.
Okay, thank you. The Honorable, that is Eric B. Yes, the Honorable Eric B.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity just to give my comments on the report on insecurity within Kericho County. Mr. Speaker, first of all, allow me also to thank the mover of the motion, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Philip Mutai. Mr. Speaker, this is a person who took his time, burned the midnight with Mr. Speaker to come up with this report, Mr. Speaker. So I think within the time frame you given, he was able to come up with the report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of insecurity, as per the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, all the people has a right to be secured, Mr. Speaker, to be provided with security, Mr. Speaker. So I believe, Mr. Speaker, within Kericho County, Mr. Speaker, we have had these rampant cases of insecurity. Mr. Speaker, I will not even mention, I want to mention one case in our area, Mr. Speaker, so in Sigawet, 2 young men, Mr. Speaker, were killed through unclear circumstances. Mr. Speaker, from the observation and the finding of this committee, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank them. They came up with a very pertinent issue, Mr. Speaker, whereby you find that the urban centers, street light, Mr. Speaker, has never been envisioned. We find that all those areas, Mr. Speaker, where our people have been killed, Mr. Speaker, is because of lack of street light, Mr. Speaker. And the recommendation made by this committee, Mr. Speaker, is that we ensure.
Let's consult in low tones.
They ensure that each and every time within the urban centers, Mr. Speaker, the street lighting should be envisioned, Mr. Speaker, so that they allow, when a person tries to attack you, Mr. Speaker, you are able to be able to identify. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the security team within county, Mr. Speaker, should be enhanced. Mr. Speaker, I want to believe that the recommendation of the trained enforcement officers, Mr. Speaker, should be employed
within the municipality. Of course, Mr. Speaker, if you have these enforcement officers, Mr. Speaker, running around or moving around our town, Mr. Speaker, the people who want to attempt the crime, Mr. Speaker, will fear because of they will see these gentlemen moving around, Mr. Speaker, and they will be scared and they will not attempt to do such insecurity, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say that by implementation or trained enforcement officers to be deployed within the municipality, I want to believe, and it is this house, Mr. Speaker, who is going to ensure, because we have constraint in terms of budget, and it is very clear that this house, Mr. Speaker, going to budget the money for the enforcement officers so that they can be able to run or to move around during night hours, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the third comment, Mr. Speaker, is that we need the security team to be apprehended and justice to be served to the families, Mr. Speaker. Of course, we've heard from the mover of the motions that, Mr. Speaker, when the suspect has been taken to the court, Mr. Speaker, they are being given bond. They are coming out with bond, Mr. Speaker, because of an inefficient security team and the court, Mr. Speaker, whereby they are allowing these people to be given bond. And when you given bond, they will go to affect the issue of justice to our people, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say that we need justice, and we allow the court to do their part, Mr. Speaker, and of course, in collaboration with the security teams. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want also to agree and to agree with the honorable member who has just spoken, Mr. Speaker, by drafting the petition. We see, when you draft the petition, Mr. Speaker, of course, you are the county government, Mr. Speaker, and you have also the upper hand of the government, whereby the national government. So when you petition, and you are going to follow it keenly, so that we take the matter of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, so that they can improve and allow the national security team to come on board to the ground, Mr. Speaker, so that they can ensure that all these issues of insecurities are determined, Mr. Speaker. So I support this report, and I want to urge honorable members, we approve this report so that people get justice and security in our county is properly implemented. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you. The Honorable Beatrice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to come and support the ad hoc committee in security. Mr. Speaker, sir, the security in Kericho is very wanting. The matter of security in Kericho is not a joke in the back. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to support this ad hoc committee in the following two reasons. The families still live in fear because of the suspect are still at large. Number two, Mr. Speaker, even our former CC was attacked and still now has been arrested and charged in court of law. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say this. If our security is not good, as members of county assembly, what about the other people in the village? Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the ad hoc committee for writing the petition to the Senate. You did a very good thing. I support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you so much, the Honorable Beatrice. The Honorable Dibble, I was almost tempted to say the Honorable Beatrice Chepkemoi as summarized, but the Honorable, Peter Kemoi, there is no Dibble in the house, that is a stranger. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. Let me echo this ad hoc committee on insecurity in our county. They have done a good work, and I'm in support of this report, even their recommendation. Mr. Speaker, sir, some few weeks ago, there was an attack of a teacher who was going to school for his duties. And two gentlemen appeared in his house around 6:30 in the morning. And he requested him to take to the house, demanding for some money. And when this gentleman insisted, he just tried to take them to the house, but he realized that if we go to the house, he might shoot me and the wife. So he decided to attack these people outside. Eventually, he shot him on his leg. And that is 6:30 in the morning. See that our families are at risk, and we need a serious intake from the report from this ad hoc committee to the Senate. I think they have to take it seriously. It is a serious matter. If these people have approached families, even in the morning, see where we are, and they were fully armed with AK-47. So we thank God because the life of the teacher is in safe hands. He shot on his left leg, and we rushed him to the hospital for his safety. So we are not supposed to take this thing for granted. It is a serious issue. It is a serious matter. We lost a young boy in Chiptingding, that is in Waldai, or through also these guns. And several other injuries they have done to our people, and especially in this side of Kapsoit, Pelgut, towards also Kablelartet, where Honorable Eric B. comes from. So we demand for a total security, and also if these people, the county commander, those who are in charge of security in this county, they have to be taken away from this county, be given other security personnel to take care of lives of our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, the Honorable Peter Kemoi. I now give to the mover of the motion to reply, the Honorable Philip Mutai.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity again to reply to the motion before us. I just want to say there are so many areas that I think most of the members, I want to point to them to take it seriously, like the security lights as being cited as one of the many contributing factors to this kind of rampant crime within our urban centers. I just want to request the roads department to come up with a very comprehensive policy.
Yes, the Honorable Kiptaubi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I don't believe it was an oversight because I had raised my hand. I just want to inform my good friend, Honorable Philip, that even though the report is well detailed, I expected that when we first came into this assembly, Honorable Speaker, there was a lot of insecurities. There were a lot of weapons which were brought to this Honorable House. And I wanted the head of security in this assembly to clarify, and maybe my good chair, my good friend, could have even captured right from when we came in. How secure are we as honorable members? Because that is a point, where we could have even started. How secure are these honorable members? How secure is this house? How is, secure are the members, within this facility? Recently, Honorable Speaker, when I was in Nairobi, I saw some, when I was scrolling my phone, I saw some boys moving around this town with some weapons. And I really asked myself a lot of questions, because are we secure with the commanders, the head of securities in this county? Thank you, Honorable Speaker. So that is just what I wanted to inform my friend, that he could have started with the security for this Honorable House and security for these honorable members. Otherwise, the report itself is good. Maybe moving forward, we'll ask the executive to do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you. So, honorable members, we had finalized. Already the mover of the motion was replying. It's only that the Honorable Paul B wanted to inform the House. I guess the Honorable Paul B must have been concerned with the recent insecurities, more so even meted against the honorable members of this county assembly. And someone whispered that was also asking whether the speaker is safe. I guess he must have wanted a clarification on that matter. However, the mover of the motion, you finalize by replying.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to concur with my good friend, Honorable B, that security really starts with you. And I think that was a very important oversight from him. Mr. Speaker, sir, I said one of the areas that we cited was about the security lights. And then I was making a contribution on the same, that the roads department, through the committee, through our committee of roads within this assembly, come up with a very comprehensive policy on matters to do with security lights. Mr. Speaker, sir, also we visited victims. I think Honorable Peter Kemo has touched on those areas, even though when you see on our report, we didn't really name the areas that we visited and the names of the victims because of the sensitivity of the issue. I think we have used a quoted language. And I was not fortunate enough because we visited victims who had lost their loved ones. When we reached their houses, they were still mourning. And then when they saw us, they saw hope in us. They saw hope in the county government of Kericho that really we will act on their issues. Another victim is that we visited somebody who has been maimed by this gang masquerading as police officers around or across our villages. One of them lost his eye. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, can you imagine visiting somebody to ask about the security matters? Last month, probably he had his eye in place, and when you are talking with him, his eye is not there. So you see the kind of very emotional issues that we really undergo as the committee. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think I want to request this Honorable House, most of the members who are here, not to discard this report, because I think by the provisions of the law, I think this report will be, this House will allow me bring this report in 6 months' time. so that we can go line by line, because I think I had mentioned earlier on that I will petition this report as my good friend Honorable Jerry Peter said. We petition the National Assembly, we petition the Senate. So I think I am asking these honorable members, don't discard this report. So finally, I want to thank this honorable House for at least allowing us or ventilating more so on this report, because we took time, we took a lot of government resources to when we were doing our findings. So Mr. Speaker, sir, just say thank you.
Okay, thank you, the Honorable the Honorable Philip Mutai, and I concur with you as well as all the honorable members that matters of security or insecurity is of great concern, not only in our towns or villages, but even in the whole republic. I want to sincerely thank the committee for doing a good job, because honorable members, just to remind you, the result of the reason why this report is in this house was as a result of a petition by the people who have been affected, and they were seeking help from their representatives who are the members of this county assembly. So I want to sincerely thank the Honorable Chairman, the Honorable Philip Mutai, and the team for the good work that they have done. It's quite disturbing that when the key people who are in charge of security were summoned or even requested to appear before the committee just to give information and to propose way forward on how our people should be protected, they failed even to appear before the committee. It is a concern, and we need to make it public. We write it to the respective authorities that even though the report is out, we must express our concern for lack of collaboration between the county government and the national government, as we all know that security largely is not devolved. So, honorable members, I now rise to put the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the Ad-hoc Committee on Insecurities within key urban areas in Kericho County. Will as many as are of similar opinion say aye? Will as many as are of contrary opinion say nay? And the ayes have it. So, honorable members, looking at our order of business, we are done with the order with the agenda that we had for this special sitting. But I must sincerely thank the honorable members who are here and who have executed their mandate this evening by staying until late to ensure that all the agenda in the order of business has been approved or adopted by the House. So, honorable members, there being no other order of business, this House stands adjourned.